Are our favorite JRPG heroes, the ones who slay monsters in the name of saving the world, actually just villainous poachers? Welcome back to Otaku Daikun. Dai here. Don't worry, for once this video is entirely apolitical. Think of it as diving into the philosophy of the Japanese role-playing game. As you undoubtedly know, JRPGs pit the player against a slew of various enemies to defeat and level up against. This is referred to as a bestiary, the entire list of all the opponents you'll encounter throughout a game. Naturally, they exist to give players straw man bad guys, foes that we can combat to gain a sense of empowerment and satisfaction. While it would take a completely separate video to explore the appeal of fighting in video games, the long and short of it is that gamers enjoy having enemies and obstacles to conquer. In the earliest days of gaming, we simply had scenarios of us versus them. You'd control perhaps a spaceship at the bottom of the screen, firing bullets at pixelated aliens. Sometimes you'd just be the blue tank, tasked with blowing up the red tank. There was little to no story involved. Gamers like myself, who grew up on these basic mechanics, are able to simply accept these rules and have fun without further context. Even modern games instill this basic video game logic, such as Overwatch. While Overwatch has a lore where the heroes go out and save humans as a team, the actual gameplay consists entirely of these heroes constantly killing each other because PvP, I suppose? Other games will try to narratively justify such infighting, such as in Dissidia Final Fantasy, where your heroes fight shadow copies of their allies. In Overwatch, however, your team will simply be blue, and you'll be tasked with fighting the red team, with but a mere color theme to differentiate friend from foe. In much the same way, JRPG worlds are sprawling with creatures that exist exclusively for you to fight. Most of the time, these monsters have very little lore, and are assumed to be evil since they attack you. After all, story and lore are nothing more than a themed coat of paint that characterizes a game's mechanics. It doesn't matter if your character wields a sword or a giant chocolate bar. It's essentially cosmetic. That said, it's not like those cosmetics don't matter. In fact, they sometimes make all the difference. We play dozens of games with similar mechanics in order to explore the themed worlds within them. It matters whether you're playing as a green blob of pixels or Link as he saves the princess from Ganon. Thus, it can be fun to look at how various RPGs contextualize the enemies you fight, and how that paints your party into either being heroes or bullies. The first time I was really forced to question my actions as a gamer in a JRPG was in Grandia 3. Underrated title for sure. There's a part in the game where your hero, Yuki, and the girl he's escorting, Alfina, crash their airplane into a forest and have to navigate to the nearest civilization. You'd expect this forest to be filled with malicious, predatory beasts that can tear you limb from limb, but that simply isn't true. Instead, you realize that this forest is inhabited by sheep. Yes, adorable little sheep that pose almost no threat whatsoever. In battle, they usually either at you, or do this cute little pirouette. Why? Hell if I know, but it sure is funny. Mechanically, they serve as punching bags for you to level up, and it can be ridiculous as you launch them into the air and chain them into an air combo. Game logic insists you take advantage of this easy EXP, but cosmetically, they make you feel bad for them. It was the first time I actually had to stop and ask myself, should I spare these enemies? They were completely optional after all. Over a decade later, I found myself facing a similar dilemma with Yoko Taro's Nier Automata. Taro has stated in interviews that he's not necessarily a huge fan of violence in video games, and as a result, he puts elements in his games that allow the player to be a pacifist. When you reach the desert and prepare to slice and dice some robots, you hear them beg for mercy, referring to you as a monster, not them. There are sections of the game where you can straight up avoid fighting, such as the amusement park, which led me to attacking only those enemies that first show hostility. Thus, by the time I reached Pascal's humble robot village, and was told that not all robots are violent, I understood that we'd wind up being friends. Of course, however, you are fully able to just thrash your way through and decimate all of the villagers despite their hospitality. This freedom of choice is an effective approach to the topic, allowing the player to make their own decisions and live with the consequences of them. Going back in time, we've got Tales of Eternia, or Tales of Destiny 2 as it was called in the United States. Early-ish into the game, there's a scene in which your party decides to rest inside of a dark cave. Mid-rest, you're interrupted when a monster called an egg bear walks in and triggers a battle. The bear is hostile, and so you're forced to kill it. Near the end of the game, though, when the hero Reed is being tested, his character evaluated in metaphysical space, the egg bear encounter is revisited, only this time you're forced to be the egg bear, struggling in futility as your former allies beat you to a pulp. It makes you realize that this monster isn't a monster at all, but another part of the planet's ecosystem, a predator that is simply trying to survive and feed its family. Rather than shaming the player for their earlier actions, however, the game simply reminds you that while life is fueled by survival of the fittest, it's important to respect and understand the creatures around us. Another example can be found in Grandia 2, in which the hero Ryudo is turned into one of Valmar's minions. You have to avoid being killed by your former allies, while trying to let them know you're not their enemy. It teaches a valuable lesson. If you, a human trapped in a monster's body, can't communicate your innocence to longtime companions, how can you be so sure that the monsters you do kill aren't equally innocent and just can't explain themselves? The basic assumption for JRPGs is that the monsters are going to kill you if you don't defend yourself. The Xenoblade games have a unique take on this. Some monsters are more aggressive than others, and will also take the player's level into consideration before instigating combat. In the beginning, you're at the bottom of the food chain, as even cute little bunnies can mop the floor with you. By the end, however, most enemies want nothing to do with you. They recognize you as being stronger than them. Conveniently, the enemies that don't fight you are so weak that they don't give you much incentive to simply kill them on a whim, meaning that it's up to you whether to be a jerk or not. Even so, certain enemies still drop unique materials, and some quests task you with culling the population of otherwise harmless creatures. The more powerful you are, the more this seems like a sick joke. A point is made of this in Tales of Berseria. At the start of the game, Velvet is a humble village girl who hunts the local delicacy, prickle boars. These prickle boars are the tutorial enemies, the generic slimes as you often see in other games. Later in the game, Velvet revisits her hometown, and is once again tasked with hunting prickle boar for dinner. At this stage, however, you're strong enough to wipe out the entire forest with ease, and your party members comment on how cruel it seems. Beyond that, though, both Berseria and its narrative successors, Asteria, do a damn good job contextualizing their bestiary. Most of the creatures you fight are actually former humans and animals that have succumbed to malevolence. Velvet's not framed as a good person, more of a vigilante avenger, but along her journey she manages to befriend a few demons, who wind up not being all that evil. When you play as Saray, the shepherd, the game frames your fights as if you're purifying your foes by defeating them. Ultimately, even if you deem your monsters as demonic or evil, it's still possible to take pity on them. Still, it's better than nothing, considering that games have no obligation to reality. It's fine to beat up on a character just for the fun of it. That degree of apathy or ignorance is permitted since games are there for escapism. It's just fascinating to note how developers over the years have been able to stimulate us on the topic in various ways. Can you think of other video games that do this? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this channel, help me beat the algorithm by liking, commenting, and sharing the video, subscribing to Otaku Daikun, and most of all, smashing that notification bell as if it were your waifu. That way you'll never miss out on all of my anime content, lore videos, live streams, and Holy Waifu Wars polls. My vids are struggling to get featured, so that bell is absolutely critical. If you want to support me directly, check out my Patreon, or consider donating via Super Chat. And as always, celebrate your fandom.